The afternoon sun was a merciless hammer, beating down on the cracked earth of the farmlands. Amy, a woman who looked a decade older than her 45 years, moved with a grim, practiced rhythm, her hoe striking the stubborn soil. Sweat traced paths through the dust on her face, each drop a testament to a promise she'd made to her son. This land, this back-breaking labor, was the bridge to his future, and she would hold it up with her own body if she had to. "You're going to kill yourself out here, Amy." A gruff voice cut through the haze of heat. Village elder Tom stood at the edge of the plot, his arms crossed over his portly belly, a look of pitying disapproval on his face. "All this for what? A fancy piece of paper? My nephew makes good money in construction. David is a strong boy. He could be sending you money, not the other way around." Amy paused, leaning on her hoe, and fixed him with a glare that was hotter than the sun. "My David is not destined for a construction site, Tom. His mind is his strength. That fancy piece of paper is his wings. Yours keep you rooted in this dirt, content to complain about the weather. His will let him see the world." She drove the hoe into the ground again, the sharp thud punctuating her sentence. She would not accept the small wad of cash he offered, a gesture that felt more like a bribe to give up than genuine help. Her independence was as stubborn as the weeds she fought every day. Miles away, in a small, cramped room, David Lee felt like he could fly without wings. He clutched a stack of letters, his hands trembling with a joy so potent it felt like electricity. The letterheads were a constellation of dreams. Mitt, Stanford, Cambridge. He had done it. For his mother, for his family, he had forged a key to unlock the world. He laughed, a pure, unadulterated sound of triumph that echoed in the tiny space. He had to call Mom. His phone buzzed before he could dial, his sister Moon's name flashing on the screen. He answered, his voice breathless with excitement. "Moon, you won't believe." "David." Her voice was a choked sob, laced with a terror that instantly froze the joy in his veins. "It's Mom." She collapsed in the field. They took her to the hospital. "It's bad." The world tilted. The letters in his hands suddenly felt like worthless paper. The drive home was a blur of panic and prayer. He found his mother in a sterile white room, looking impossibly small against the sheets, and for drip methodically feeding life back into her depleted veins. The doctor's words were clinical, detached, and utterly devastating. "Chronic exhaustion, severe malnutrition. Her body has been running on empty for years, David. She's burned through all her reserves. If she continues this lifestyle, she won't have many years left." Guilt, sharp and suffocating, clawed at David's throat. His dreams, his ambitions, they had been built on the foundation of his mother's withering health. He stumbled back to her bedside, the admission letters crinkling in his fist. He looked at her tired, sleeping face, at the deep lines etched by worrying and work. He couldn't do it. He couldn't let her sacrifice another day. "I'm not going," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I'll stay. I'll get a job. I'll take care of you." With a surge of desperate resolve, he began tearing the letters, shredding the logos of May and Stanford into meaningless confetti. Each rip felt like he was tearing a piece of his own soul. But it was a pain he welcomed, a penance. "No." The voice was weak, but it sliced through his despair with the force of a command. Amy's eyes were open, blazing with an unexpected, terrifying fire. She pushed herself up, a frail body trembling with effort, and grabbed his wrist with a grip of iron. "You will not," she rasped, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "You will not throw this away. Do you hear me, David? This isn't just your future. It's ours, it's Moon's. It is the only way out of this life. For generations, our family has been trapped by this land. You are the one who breaks the chain." Her eyes filled with tears, but her voice grew stronger, fueled by a mother's ferocious love. "If you stay here for me, You are killing me faster than any doctor's prediction. If you tear out that hope, I will walk out of this hospital and into the river. The threat, raw and desperate, hung in the air between them. David stared at her, his own tears blinding him. He saw not a frail, sick woman, but a warrior willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. He nodded, unable to speak, the torn pieces of his future falling from his limp hand. He would go, but he would do it on his own terms. He would not take another ounce of life from her. That night, he made a call to his uncle who ran a construction crew in the city, his voice low and determined. While Amy recovered, her strength slowly returning, she began her own quiet, desperate campaign. She unlocked a small wooden box and removed the few heirlooms she owned. A simple jade pendant from her grandmother, a pair of thin gold earrings from her wedding. Each trip to the pawn shop felt like she was selling off a piece of her history to buy her son's future. It wasn't nearly enough. Swallowing her pride, she began visiting the villagers, starting with Jim and Nancy, a couple she had helped nurse through a bad flu just last winter. She explained the situation, her voice steady despite the humiliation coiling in her gut. It's for the tuition deposit, just a loan. I will pay you back, with interest. Jim avoided her eyes, inspecting a crack in his wall. Times are tough, Amy. We just don't have it. Nancy chimed in, a saccharine smile on her face. Studying overseas. So expensive, is it really practical? There are perfectly good schools here. It was the same everywhere she went. Doors closed in her face. Excuses were offered like cheap condolences. Some openly mocked her ambition for David, their whispers following her down the dusty paths. Her dignity was stripped away with each rejection, leaving her feeling raw and exposed. Just as she was about to surrender to a bleak wave of despair, a soft voice called her name. Vicky, David's childhood fiancée, stood before her, her expression full of a quiet empathy that was a balm to Amy's wounded spirit. In her hands, she held a small, red envelope. It's not much, Auntie Amy, Vicky said, pressing it into her hands. It was my gift money. For my birthday, it was a modest sum, but in a world that had offered nothing but closed doors, it felt like a fortune. It was the gesture, the unwavering belief. Tears welled in Amy's eyes. Vicky, I can't, you must, Vicky insisted gently. Her eyes, clear and intelligent, held a spark of an idea. Auntie, have you thought of asking Mr. Lee, the elder Mr. Lee out of the village? They say he's the richest man around here, but he came from nothing. I've heard he sponsors students who have no other way. The gates to Mr. Lee's estate were wrought iron, ornate and imposing, a stark contrast to the simple wooden doors of the village. Guided by Vicky's gentle but insistent hand, Amy stepped onto the manicured lawn, her worn fabric shoes sinking slightly into the impossibly green grass. She clutched a thin folder containing David's academic records, the crisp papers a testament to a brilliance the world seemed determined to smother. Each step toward the grand, colonial-style house felt like a betrayal of her pride, but one look at Vicky's resolute face reminded her this was for David. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of polished wood and faint floral perfume. Mr. Lee, the village's wealthiest elder, sat behind a large mahogany desk, his kind eyes crinkling as he reviewed David's transcripts. A few other villagers, summoned as witnesses, stood awkwardly near the walls, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Astonishing, Mr. Lee murmured, looking up from the papers. He didn't need Amy's tearful, rehearsed speech. The numbers and accolades spoke for themselves. This boy is a once-in-a-generation mind. The village cannot let this talent go to waste. He closed the folder with a decisive snap. Consider it done. I will cover the majority of his university fees. The words were dam-breaking. Relief washed over Amy so completely her knees buckled. She fell to the floor, her forehead touching the cool marble in a gesture of profound gratitude. The city skyline glittered outside David Lee's penthouse office, a sprawling tapestry of electric dreams he had woven from nothing. 10 years. 10 years of monastic silence, of severing every tie to his past to build this empire. Now, holding a phone that felt alien in its lightness, he dialed the number etched into his soul, a landline. The signal connected, a crackle of static bridging a decade-wide chasm. He wasn't calling as a CEO. He was calling as a son. A young woman's voice, sharp and cold, answered. "Who is this?" "Moon. It's me. It's David." Silence. Then, a sound like a choked sob twisting into a snarl. "David." The ghost decided to call. Her voice was laced with a bitterness so profound it felt like acid. "Where have you been?" "Hiding in your palace while we rotted here." "You are a monster. A heartless, selfish monster." The accusations hit him like shrapnel, tearing through the armor of his success. "Moon. Please, I can explain everything." Explain," she shrieked, her rage pouring through the receiver. "What is there to explain?" "Mum is dying, you bastard. She's dying." David's blood ran cold. The glittering city outside vanished. "What are you talking about?" "Brain cancer." Moon spat the words, each one a nail in his coffin. "The doctors gave her 6 months. That was a week ago. She's been selling vegetables to pay for my school fees while her brain is literally being eaten away." "Your long absence wasn't just abandonment, David. It was a death sentence." Moon's voice broke, raw with grief and fury. "So you can take your explanation and your money and go to hell. If you have a single shred of humanity left, you will get on a plane right now. Otherwise, don't bother coming to the funeral. You are no brother of mine." The line went dead. David stood frozen, the phone slipping from his numb fingers and clattering onto the marble floor. The triumph of his return, the grand reunion he had pictured for 1,000 nights, dissolved into a nightmare. He wasn't a returning king. He was a son who had missed his mother's final days. A desperate, clawing urgency seized him, obliterating everything but the need to get home. Miles away, under a relentless sun, Amy knelt in her small vegetable plot. The dry earth clung to her worn hands as she carefully tended the greens. Her movements slow, but determined. A wave of dizziness washed over her, and she pressed a hand to her temple, willing it away. A warm trickle ran from her nose. She swiped it away with the back of her wrist, glancing nervously toward the house to ensure Moon hadn't seen. She had to be strong for Moon, for David. Her solitude was broken by the crunch of footsteps. A small crowd of villagers, led by the perpetually sneering Tom and his wife Nancy, had gathered at the edge of her plot. "They weren't there to help?" "Still at it, Amy," Tom called out, a cruel smirk on his face. "You were harder than an ox. Maybe you should save your energy and just marry Moon off to some rich city man. Why waste money on a university she never finished?" "My daughter will get her education," Amy said, her voice strained but firm, not looking up from her work. Nancy scoffed, fanning herself dramatically. "With what money?" "The money from your fraudster son. The whole village is talking. They say David is a con artist overseas, wanted by the police. He's brought nothing but shame on us." The words were a physical blow. Amy's head snapped up. "That is a lie. My David is a good boy, an honorable man. Honorable men don't disappear for 10 years. Another villager shouted, "He owes us. We all pitched in for his tuition. We want our money back." The murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. They closed in, their faces tight with greed and resentment. "We want cash. Now. Or we're taking this house. This land. You will do no such thing." Amy gasped, struggling to her feet. Her body trembled with weakness and fury. She was alone, frail figure against a hostile mob. One man laughed crudely. If you're so desperate for cash for your precious moon's tuition, I know some nightclubs in the city. A pretty girl like her could make some quick money. A primal rage surged through Amy, eclipsing her pain. Get out, she screamed, her voice cracking. Get off my land, she shoved at the man's chest. A futile gesture that only made them laugh harder. They pressed forward, hands reaching to mark out the land they now claimed as their own. Just as the first villager stepped onto her vegetable patch, the sleek, silent purr of an expensive engine cut through the commotion. A black luxury sedan, impossibly clean against the dusty village road, pulled to a stop. The driver's door opened, and a woman emerged. She wore a tailored business suit and sharp heels that sank slightly into the dirt. It was Vicky. The villagers fell silent, intimidated by her aura of wealth and authority. She surveyed the scene with cool, assessing eyes, her gaze lingering on Amy's frail form and the blood smeared on her wrist. What is going on here? Vicky's voice was calm, but it carried an unmistakable command. Tom, emboldened by greed, stepped forward. She owes us money, for her son. He ran off with it. Vicky's expression didn't change. She walked to her car, retrieved a checkbook and a pen from her briefcase, and turned back to the stunned crowd. How much? After a moment of shocked silence, Tom blurted out, $100,000. It was an absurdly inflated figure. A gamble. Without hesitation, Vicky wrote the check and tore it from the book, holding it out. Here. Now leave her alone. Tom snatched it, his eyes wide as he stared at the amount. The other villagers gaped, their hostility melting into disbelief. They mumbled their thanks and shuffled away, defeated and bewildered. Once they were gone, Vicky turned to Amy, her composure finally cracking. A deep, resonant disappointment filled her eyes. Auntie, are you okay? She asked, her voice softening as she helped Amy to a stool. I came as soon as I heard the rumors. She paused, the next words heavy with years of hurt. I have to believe them now. David wouldn't let this happen to you. He wouldn't abandon you to these vultures. Amy shook her head, tears welling. No, Vicky, you're wrong about him. I don't want to hear it, Auntie, Vicky said, a voice turning firm, pragmatic. I have a proposal. Moon deserves the world. I will pay for her entire overseas university tuition, everything. Flights, housing, books. Amy's eyes widened, a flicker of desperate hope igniting within her. Vicky, I could never. On one condition, Vicky interrupted, her gaze unwavering. You must officially break off my engagement to David. He is no longer worthy of this family. He is no longer worthy of me. The hope in Amy's eyes died, replaced by a steely resolve. The offer was a lifeline, a gilded cage for her daughter's future. But the price was her son's honor. She looked at the woman her son was supposed to marry, a woman who had given up on him and made her choice. No, Amy said, her voice quiet but unbreakable. The village hall burst, a cacophony of forced laughter and sycophantic praise for the centennial of Mr. Lee, the village elder. Reed lanterns cast a warm, deceptive glow over tables laden with food. Into this scene of performative respect stepped Amy, her figure frail, her steps hesitant. She clutched a clay pot, the steam wafting from it carrying the simple, honest aroma of a stewing hen, a gift from the heart. But in this room, an emblem of her poverty, heads turned, whispers slithered through the air like smoke. Cam, a woman whose face was perpetually pinched with disdain, was the first to speak aloud. Look what the cat dragged in. Amy, is that really all you could bring? A single chicken for Mr. Lee's 100th birthday. Amy flinched, her grip tightening on the pot. It's all we could afford, sneered Tom, a stout man whose family had lent them money. You talk of affording things when your son. The great David Lee, he's a wanted fraud. He runs off, leaves you with his debts, and you bring a chicken to a banquet. The accusation, now public, hung in the air, and suffocating. The noise of the banquet quieted as a circle of onlookers formed, their eyes hungry for a spectacle. Nancy, Cam's sister, jabbed a finger toward Amy. Pay us back. You asked for 10 years of interest. We were kind, and this is how you repay us. By raising a swindler. Overwhelmed, Amy's legs gave way. The clay pot slipped from her grasp, shattering on the polished floor and splattering the humble stew. Tears streamed down her pale, sunken cheeks as she sank to her knees amidst the wreckage of her offering. Please, she begged, her voice a ragged whisper. Have mercy. My moon, she needs to go to college. Just give us a little more time. The sight of her kneeling only fueled their cruelty. They saw not a desperate mother, but a confirmation of their power over her. Just then, Vicky pushed through the crowd. Her expression was a careful mask of sympathy. She knelt beside Amy, her voice a low, persuasive murmur meant only for her. Auntie Amy, this is unbearable. Let me help. She paused, letting the offer hang in the air. I will pay every single debt. I will fund Moon's entire education. All you have to do is break off my engagement to David. Let him go. Let us all be free of this shame. Amy stared at Vicky, the woman she had considered a daughter, now twisting the knife of her kindness into her deepest wound. It was a choice between her son's honor and her daughter's future, a choice no mother should have to make. As the villagers pressed closer, their demands growing louder, the grand doors of the hall swung open with a force that silenced the entire room. A man stood silhouetted against the evening light. He was tall, dressed in a bespoke suit that spoke of a world far removed from this dusty village. As he strode into the hall, his polished leather shoes clicking with quiet authority on the floor, the hostile crowd parted like the Red Sea. His face, once familiar, was now carved with a decade of focus and command. It was David Lee. His gaze swept over the scene, taking in the shattered pot, his weeping sister, and finally his mother on her knees. A cold, dangerous calm settled over his features. He walked directly to his mother, gently lifting her to her feet and wrapping a protective arm around her. And Moon, who? He began, his voice low but carrying to every corner of the hall. Gave you the right to humiliate my mother. Tom puffed out his chest. She owes us money, you, her fraud of a son. David cut him off with a look so sharp it was a physical blow. Fraud. He produced his phone and tapped the screen. A moment later, his assistant, who had entered silently behind him, projected the phone's display onto the large white wall behind the banquet stage. The screen filled with the Forbes global homepage. There, under the headline "The Tech Titan You've Never Heard Of," was a picture of David Lee, named CEO of a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. Stock tickers, patent registrations, and headlines from the Wall Street Journal flashed across the screen, each one a nail in the coffin of their vicious lies. A collective gasp rippled through the hall. Cam's jaw dropped. Nancy's face went white. Tom stared, his mouth agape, as the staggering numbers, billions, not thousands, mocked his petty claims. They had built their self-righteousness on the belief that they were superior. Now, they were nothing more than insects beneath the heel of a giant. You speak of debt, David said, his voice dripping with ice. He snapped his fingers. His assistant stepped forward and opened a sleek briefcase, revealing stacks upon stacks of pristine cash. Here is 10 times what my mother ever borrowed. Take it, not as an admission of a debt, but as a severance. From this moment on, my family is tied to none of you. He tossed a bundle of bills at Tom's feet. Consider it a fee for the lesson you've taught me about the ugliness of the human heart. The villagers recalled, their faces burning with a shame far more potent than any they had inflicted. David turned his back on them, his attention solely on his family. He pulled his mother into a deep embrace, burying his face in her hair. "I'm home, Mom," he whispered, his voice thick with a decade of unspoken longing. "I'm so sorry. Why didn't you tell me you were sick?" Amy could only weep, her hands clutching the fine fabric of his suit, her body trembling with overwhelming pride and relief. Her son was not a failure. He was a king. Her faith, held tight in the darkest of years, was finally, gloriously vindicated. Vicky approached them, her face a canvas of regret and awe. She had almost traded away a diamond for a handful of dust. David met her gaze, his expression softening. He saw not the woman who had just tried to bargain for his freedom, but the girl who had stood by him when he had nothing. He took her hand, his voice now loud enough for all to hear. "And to Vicky, who waited for me," he pulled a small, velvet box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a simple, elegant ring, not ostentatious, but timeless. He slipped it onto her finger. "I promised you a better life. I intend to make you the happiest bride in the world." Vicky's eyes filled with tears, this time of joy. Finally, David addressed the entire hall, his voice ringing with purpose. "My mother always dreamed that the children of this village would never have to suffer as I did." He turned to a beaming Mr. Lee. "In your honor, sir, I am establishing a $10 million foundation for education and infrastructure development in this village. We will build new schools and a new hospital." He stood tall, his arm around his mother, Vicky's hand held firmly in his. Moon stood beside them, her tears replaced by a look of fierce pride. The Lee family, once bowed by poverty and scorn, now stood as a beacon of hope. Their honor was restored, their future limitless, a new dawn breaking over the ruins of yesterday's cruelty.